Your closing is Friday. On Tuesday, a tropical storm watch goes up 400 miles away from your house, and your closing is dead. Not delayed. Dead. Until further notice. And it has nothing to do with your buyer. Nothing to do with your house. Nothing to do with your price. Almost nobody warns a seller this can happen. So today I'm going to explain it. What actually triggers the freeze. How long it really lasts. What it blocks and what it does not block. And the 4 options you have if your closing gets caught in one. I'm Anthony Astolfi, the owner of Home Rescue Team and a licensed Florida real estate agent. I sit with families across Broward and Miami-Dade in the middle of hurricane season every single year. This is education, not legal or insurance advice. For your policy, talk to your insurance agent and your title company. So here's what's actually happening. There's a moment in every sale called binding. Binding is the moment an insurance policy stops being a quote and becomes real coverage. Your buyer's lender will not release a single dollar until that policy is bound. No binding, no insurance, no funding. No funding, no closing. Now here's the part that catches people. When the National Weather Service issues a tropical storm watch or a hurricane watch for any part of Florida, most insurance carriers stop binding new coverage, and I want you to hear how wide that is. Any part of Florida. A watch near Key West can freeze a closing in Jacksonville. It is not about where the storm is going. It is about the fact that a storm was named and Florida is in the cone of concern. And this is not a rogue company being difficult. It is nearly all of them. Private carriers and citizens, the state's insurer of last resort. Is it unreasonable? Honestly, no. An insurance company will not agree to take on a brand new risk when the loss is already visible on the radar. You would not either. The problem is not that it exists. The problem is that nobody tells the seller it exists until the phone call 3 days before closing. So let's make sure that phone call never surprises you. So how long does a freeze last? Here's the honest answer. Most carriers reopen, binding somewhere between 24 and 78 hours after the threat clears. Not after the storm passes, after the watch is lifted. Those are 2 different days. And in August, September, and October, storms come in clusters. One system clears and another one is already forming behind it. When that happens, a freeze that should have lasted 2 days can stretch to 1 or 2 weeks. That is the part that wrecks closings. Now let me tell you what a freeze does not do, because this is where people panic for no reason. If your buyer's policy was already bound before the watch went up, it stays in force. A freeze does not cancel existing coverage. It only blocks brand new policies and increases to coverage. So if the policy was bound Monday and the watch came Tuesday, you are probably fine. Second thing, a freeze does not stop a cash closing because there is no lender requiring proof of insurance before releasing money. A cash buyer can still choose to insure the house, but nobody is forcing it as a condition of funding. Now flood. Flood is separate and flood has its own trap. A new flood policy normally has a 30-day waiting period, but there is an exception. If the flood policy is being bought in connection with a loan, there is no waiting period. Coverage is effective at the closing, as long as the application and the premium are in at or before closing. Read that exception carefully. It is tied to a loan, which means a finance buyer gets the waiver, and a cash buyer in a flood zone does not. A cash buyer who wants flood coverage may be looking at that full 30-day wait. So what do you actually do when a freeze hits your closing? You have 4 moves. 1, wait it out. If your buyer is solid and their rate lock has room, this is usually the right answer. 2, extend the rate lock. That costs money, and somebody has to agree to pay for it. 3, check whether the policy was already bound. You would be surprised how often the answer is yes, and everyone panicked for nothing. 4, change who is buying the house. A buyer who does not need a lender does not need a bound policy to close. That last one is not always the right answer. Let me show you the numbers, and you'll see exactly when it is. Let me put real dollars on a real-shaped example. These are rounded, illustrative numbers, not one specific family. Every situation is different. A house in Pembroke Pines, financed buyer, closing set for the 12th. On the 9th, a tropical storm watch goes up for South Florida. Binding freezes that afternoon. The buyer's policy was not yet bound. The storm turns out to sea, and the watch drops on the 12th. Carriers reopen binding 72 hours later. Then the file has to be re-verified and rescheduled. They finally close on the 23rd, 11 days late. So what did those 11 days cost? The rate lock had to be extended, about $1,100. The seller carried the house 11 extra days. Mortgage, taxes, insurance, about $1,000. The movers were rebooked, $400. Call it $2,500 and a very bad week. Now here's the honest part. That is the good outcome. The deal survived. Now run it again. And this time the buyer's rate lock expires during the freeze. Their new rate is higher. They requalify at a lower price or they walk. Now you are not out $2,500. You are back on the market in September with days on market stacking up in the middle of hurricane season, carrying the house at about $3,000 a month while you wait. So let's compare. Option A. Wait out the freeze with a solid buyer. Costs about $2,500. Usually the right call. Option B. Buyer's lock blows and the deal dies. Cost you a month or more of carrying plus a weaker negotiating position. Option C. Close with a buyer who does not need a lender. No bound policy required. You typically net less than a retail sale. And here is the part a salesperson would not tell you. If your buyer is strong and their lock has room, option A wins. Just wait. Do not let anyone rush you into selling for less because of a weather map. Option C only wins in a narrow window. When the lock is about to blow, when you genuinely cannot carry another month, or when the house has a condition problem that was going to fight the insurance underwriting anyway. That's the whole decision. If you want, send me your address and your closing date. I'll tell you which option your situation actually points to. Even when the answer is wait for your buyer. That's free, and I'm not going to chase you. HomeRescueTeam.net or call 305-699-9763. If this made hurricane season less confusing, subscribe. I put these out twice a week for Florida families,